Hello, this is Dr. Terry James Gingrass, and this is Dr. G's ADHD Chat, a show trying to make the world safe for ADHDers. I'm a clinical neuropsychologist and the father of two ADHD kids, and apparently I also accidentally married into an ADHD family. So I have learned a tremendous amount about ADHD over the years, uh, raising two kids, two very different children, a girl with what we used to call inattentive ADHD, and a young man who definitely was the hyperactive type. Um, I think I've said most at the start of most sessions that when I started having kids, we didn't even have ADHD as a diagnosis. And it wasn't until 1980 that ADD was a diagnosis, and then 1987 when ADHD became the diagnosis of choice. Anyway, so it's been a learning experience, and there are a lot of things we didn't know back then that we know now. The biggie I'd like to talk to today is willpower, because willpower is a strong concept, and it's kind of included or a part of the whole cowboy way that those of us who've never ridden a horse in our lives still kind of we kind of pretend that we think that way too. Okay, so let's start off. Just a quick definition is willpower, the ability to control impulses, emotions, and behaviors to resist short-term temptation to achieve long-term goals. Wow. I mean, that is a handful. The biggest problem with willpower as a concept is that it is a moral concept. If you do this, you are a moral, courageous individual who has total control over his or her impulses. And as we can see almost in every January, towards the second or third week, when all of the New Year's resolutions have already been broken, that willpower is not that powerful. Matter of fact, when you think in terms of control, there are only about three categories, and willpower is not at the top. Okay, the strongest control type of control is environmental, and that involves, basically, if you can't get to it, you're not going to smoke it, eat it, drink it, whatever. Okay, if you're locked in a room and they won't let you out until you sober up, then you're going to sober up. That's what's going to happen. Control is absolute, it's external. You don't have anything to do with it. You don't have control of it, but it's impossible for you to break whatever problem you're trying to deal with. And we see variations on this. We have prisons, which are supposed to keep society safe, but it also keeps bad guys from doing bad things. It doesn't work very well because bad guys find ways to do bad things while they're in prison. But that is the top, the most powerful. And then the next one is social. Humans are social animals. There's nothing that most of us fear more than being embarrassed in public. And so the trick is, if you're trying to break a habit, you're trying to quit smoking, tell all of your friends that you're going to quit smoking, whatever day it is, and then make sure they call you up and find out if you actually did it. And that will keep a lot of people on the straight and narrow of getting rid of nicotine addiction. It's not the most powerful, but it is a very powerful motivation. It keeps a lot of us in line, I guess we'd say. Social power, for all of us, we care about what other people think about us. And so getting them to, letting them in enough to let them know that I'm trying to do this. And, most people will be encouraging. Some people will razz you if they think you're screwing up, but, it's still a very powerful sort of way of controlling behaviors and controlling addictions and impulses and all that other stuff. The third way of control, the third way of control is self-control, willpower. It is the weakest. It is the one that most people go to first, rely on, but it's definitely the weakest and the easiest to break. There are no consequences. I can say I'm going to lose 20 pounds, but if there's a cake in the oven, I don't know if I'll make it through the day. That's just the way it goes. Like in ADHDers get a lot of grief for lack of willpower, but ADHD is not a definite, it's not a deficit in willpower. It's a deficit in executive functioning, attention, working memory, time management, time sense, all those sorts of things are where ADHD is. And ADHD is a neurologic condition. ADHDers, for some reason, either don't manufacture enough or they metabolize it way too fast, dopamine, which is the one that gives you the job well done. Or when you pat a puppy, that feeling, that is dopamine going to town. And it's not, the lack of that is what causes ADHDers their problems. So they have a hard time with anything that doesn't have an immediate payback. If you get good grades at the end of the semester, I'll buy you a bicycle. Has absolutely no impact. It goes over their head. They just have a hard time with anything that's a way away, that they have to hold themselves online and stay focused on it and all that other thing. And they just have a real big problem. And one of the things, it's kind of a cute little saying, is dopamine. You can't willpower your way out of a dopamine regulation problem. I like that. I'm thinking about having the t-shirts made. But you think about willpower, and that's the way most of us were probably raised. Certainly it's the way I was raised. Be a man, stand up for something, do your push-ups, go for your run, field 300 baseballs a day, all kinds of stuff. And while the effort, the impulse that drove most of us, most of our parents, I guess I should say, is that you need willpower. You need to be able to put aside stuff. You need to be able to put $2 in your savings account rather than buying a bunch of baseball cards, or you need to make decisions, and your willpower is the important thing on making the right decisions. So it's a problem for ADHDers because they have a lot of trouble with this stuff. They can't, they have troubles putting things off, if you, I know like the example I used, but if you've ever tried to get an ADHDer to do something that's not got an immediate payoff, it is really difficult. They will have a hard time doing that just because there's no, oh, I read that chapter tonight kind of thing. Just that doesn't happen. That they don't feel that. They don't have that sensation, and so it's a big deal. And what tends to happen in the people who are devout believers in willpower is that the kid gets shamed. And it goes into adulthood. You get shamed as an adult. Oh, you didn't do this. You were supposed to, and all that sort of thing. It's a definite cause of people not feeling very good about themselves as adults because they got so much shame, basically, shame training as kids. And I'm sure none of us want that to happen, but sometimes it does. It's hard to, why can't you just, like my son, we looked in his book bag one time when the teacher was saying, hey, he's not turning in his homework. We found like 2 weeks worth of homework that he'd completed sitting there in his, kind of wadded up at the bottom of his book bag. Why didn't you turn it in? Oh, it's like, okay. And we could not just get him to turn it in, so we had to make other arrangements. But that's one of those things that happens a lot, and it's not willpower. It's not a lack of willpower. It's a myth that is what causes all this. Oh, if he just had willpower, no, he wouldn't have any of these problems. And those are usually the people who don't believe in ADHD, and those are also the people who somehow didn't have an ADHD kid, because there's nothing like having a nice hyperactive child for you to start really believing in ADHD. It's a lot. But the problem with it, if you're using willpower all the time, you're teaching the kid that he doesn't measure up or she doesn't measure up. If you had some willpower, you could just do this. Their brain doesn't work that way. It doesn't respond. They don't get the little surge of dopamine from a job well done that most people who are neurotypical do get. That's why neurotypical people can do so many of the dull things, the boring things in life, and convince themselves that it's good enough. When they're about 55 or so, they start questioning that. But that's the way the system is set up. The system is set up for neurotypicals. It's not set up for neurodivergent kids or adults, for that matter, whatever their particular issue is. I mean, autism, ADHD is like we're talking about learning disabilities. A lot of times, though, the people who didn't get shamed will be able to come out with enough self-confidence and positive ways of dealing with things that they do extraordinarily well. That guy that started Apple, he's ADHD. He did pretty well for himself, except when he got cancer, those apricot bits are not a good thing. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about what actually works for ADHD kiddos, or adults for that matter. It's all pretty much the same. Adults have a little more control typically than, say, a 16-year-old, but they still have the same basic dopamine lack, and they still have the same if it's something they love, doing, you know, I did a whole series of things on different vocations that are good for ADHDers that they really like, and kind of get onto, uh, and can stay at, because that's the other problem that ADHDers have, is that they tend to change jobs a lot. Oh, he didn't understand me, or she was or whatever. It's difficult for them. Anyway, so first thing is ADHDers' executive functions are weak. Okay, and there's no amount of willpower that will enable them to make up for that. So you have to, what we call, externalize the executive function. I thought I had made that up, and then I saw it somewhere else. Anyway, but basically what that means is, while some people with good working memory will be able to uh, listen to 4 orders from the boss and remember it 2 or 3 hours later, some people forget half of them, or some forget all of them. That's working memory. Okay, that's a problem. But anybody can write all 4 things down on their handy dandy notepads, or what I use. But hey, some people like electronics. So, but using a timer, using a day timer, using a uh, timers that you can set for 30 minutes, and then you're ready, and you can see track your progress. And there's timers, checklists, especially like kids, the morning routine. Mornings are usually a real pain at an ADHD household. But if the kids have a checklist on the bathroom mirror, or on the door, or on the wall somewhere, anyway, doesn't matter where, but needs to be there, so they can go, I brushed my teeth, I put on my clothes, I comb my hair. You just have a checklist, a real specific checklist. Okay, checklists are wonderful, wonderful things. It's how the Air Force is able to take a 19-year-old who just barely made it through high school and turn him into a crackerjack jet engine mechanic, because the first thing he gets is a big book of checklists, and he has to follow them completely. And it's, that works for you too. Okay, what you want them to do before they come down for breakfast, set it up, plan it ahead. And that's the second one, is planning ahead. Okay, I had one neurotypical kid, and my inattentive child was not really much of an issue. But boy, for the other one, I had to plan ahead. His mother had to plan ahead. She did a better job of it than I did, but you have to anticipate. Okay, we're going to go see the cousins. Well, for 2 of the kids, that's not going to be an issue. For the other one, he'll probably get into a fight with one of them. What do we do about that? You just have to anticipate it. When I just thought I had all neurotypical kids, I was like, hey, piece of cake. They have an issue, I deal with the issue. It's not that big a problem typically. But with ADHD, it was a whole different ballgame. You have to have anticipated things that could go wrong and figure out what some compensatory strategies. We used to travel a fair amount when I was in the Air Force, particularly. When you're doing a PCS, a permanent change of station, when you're moving from one part of the country to the other, or one part of the world to the other, you need to have things set up for your ADHDers. You need to have planned ahead. What is he like? What does she like? What how does he or she entertain themselves? How can they pass the time? Da 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 da. You have to think ahead. That's just the way it is. And then dopamine. Okay. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter. It's in your brain. It's how your neurons talk to each other. So how they signal, and it goes very fast. But basically, if you've ever seen a picture of a neuron, it's kind of shaped like that, and it's got a big long thing, and then it's got an end on it, sort of like a hand, and that's when it's communicating to another neuron at a thing called a synapse. And the way it's just all electrical signal while it's in the axon and going down there. When it gets to the synapse where the two nerves are communicating, it's done chemically. So this side secretes, okay, we're talking dopamine, secretes dopamine. It travels across the synapse, and the neuron on the other side takes the neurotransmitter and does whatever it does to it to make it be a signal, and then it passes it on to the next neuron and so on. And this happens really fast. Okay, so your ADHDer has a little problem with getting enough dopamine in there, but there fortunately are some things that help with that. My favorite is without a doubt exercise. Okay, there are John Mattei, I think, and he claims that he can, if he can get in a 45-minute run in the morning, he's good for 6 to 8 hours. He can make it almost a whole day without medication. It's the easiest one to think about. I mean, there are all kinds of things that also help. Knowing some meditation or some relaxation, getting a good night's sleep. Music will do it for some. Different kinds of music. There's no, it doesn't have to be lilting classical music. It can be pretty rough and ready as long as it works for them. And then the petting a puppy. Anything that involves novelty, challenge rather, and there are some. The other thing is, with an ADHD child, you have to be observing them all the time. You have to, what do they like? What do they do for fun? How do they fill their time? What do they do when nobody's hovering over them, giving them orders and stuff? How do they fill the time? Most of them tend to be somewhat creative. And that covers a whole wide variety. It doesn't mean they're great artists or anything. It could mean they're musicians, or it could be they're thinkers and like to design stuff and all those sorts of things. It's a real different kind of way of looking at kids. In my generation, they told us what we were going to do. My dad said, "No, you're not going to be left-handed. You're going to be right-handed because I want you to play infield." So, okay. I didn't really. It wasn't like we had a discussion. It just happened. Okay. Okay, I mean, the big deal you've got to make the distinction of when you're talking willpower. Why can't you that's a moral question, okay? That's not got anything to do with a neurologic condition. And so you can't make it become a moral issue, because then, then what you've got is you're shaming and all those sorts of things, and your kid is not happy. And I mean, the thing you don't see while you're working with them when they're young is what happens when they're older. I've worked a lot with older adults with ADHD, and a lot of them have real serious emotional problems, very low self-esteem, because, they were told 70, 80 times a day how that they needed to improve something, that this was wrong or that was wrong, or they did, so there's a self-esteem is low. Uh, a lot of rejection sensitive dysphoria, that when they go off like a, get really angry really fast. That's because their self-esteem is low, and they took a lot of that criticism in, and it's not just the parents that are doing the criticism. There are teachers and coaches and principals, and for some people, the cop on the street. There are lots of different things that are lots of different adults who feel perfectly qualified to criticize your child, including the lunchroom lady and the school janitor, and people who probably shouldn't be talking to your kids, and certainly not correcting them. So willpower is highly overrated. You can design situation structures that will work better for you using, the three principles I talked about: externalizing the executive functions, plan ahead, and know the things that increase dopamine. Okay, I'm Dr. Terry James Gingrass. This has been Dr. G's ADHD Chat. This is an attempt. I'd love to make the world a little safer for ADHD, because this school system, this education system particularly, and I got nothing against it, any teachers. My mother was a teacher, okay, special ed too. So we have a system that was originally designed to train workers for factory work, okay? And it hasn't really been changed in 15, 20 years. And we're not teaching the kids to think and problem solve. I mean, shoot, we're not even teaching them how to use a checkbook, or how to pay taxes, or what taxes are, or how to invest money, or any of those things that we need in this overly capitalistic society. We just haven't done any of that. And the problem is, or one of the big problem for ADHD kids, is it doesn't really matter what they're interested in. This is what they're going to get. They're going to get math. They're going to get, arithmetic. They're going to get social studies. They're going to get English. They're going to get history, whether they like it or not, or whether they're any good at it or not. So we need to redesign that stuff, but we need a whole bunch of parents who are in favor of doing that and who are excited about the prospects. And that could be you. Okay, so my website is terrygingrassphd.com. You can sign up for my newsletter, which I highly recommend. It's totally different from what I do in the podcast. And it's, it's doing really well, and it will give you some more information. And I know some people are way better at reading and taking information in than they are at listening to somebody talk at them or teach. Okay, the other thing I do is I do coaching, and we're going to be changing that up a good bit. I'm going to be starting a membership group sometime in the next, give me a couple of months, sometime in there. But do let me know if you're interested in that. I also do individual coaching. That's a little more pricey, but it's a lot more personal. So anyway, I will catch you on the next time. And remember, make the world safe for ADHD. It's nothing to be ashamed of. It's a neurologic condition that's genetically transmitted. And so we'll catch you next time.